I basically, like I said, I basically did this on my own. I asked people to come to these meetings and give testimony. And it was just during the week and nobody would take work off. They didn't show up and I was just pretty much alone. So when things came down to like giving up night fishing, I was like, sure, that's an easy thing to give up to be able to shoot walleye. Like, that's not a big deal. But then there's people, I post about it and they're like, oh, now we can't shoot fish at night. Oh, I'm so mad. And I'm like, but when you can shoot a walleye, not that you ever win at night.
Yeah. You should have showed up then, dude.
People, yeah, exactly. Show up. What a convenient thing to say after all the work has been done.
I don't know about you, but I always carry a knife. It doesn't matter what the situation is, I'm always reaching for a blade. Whether I'm out hunting in the backwoods, fishing on lakes and rivers, or simply cutting rope at camp. And when I need a tool, I want something that's quality, durable, and handmade right here in the USA. I know that's something you're looking for as well, so go to maloneknives.com and get yourself something that's going to last and look damn good too. This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Thanks for tuning back in today, joined by a special guest, Jonathan Durtka of Purely Michigan Spearfishing. Jonathan, what's going on, man? You're in your car, you're at a McDonald's. Sounds like a good day. It's
the life of a traveling electrician, I'll tell you. It's not glamorous, but it's my life.
Heck yeah. So, you're the first person I've ever seen doing spearfishing in Michigan. Actually, your stuff popped up on Instagram a few weeks ago. Started following you, and then my friend Pat, who's with MUCC, was like, dude, you got to talk to this guy. So here we are, and I'm super excited about it because I like movers and shakers and people who get shit done, which you seem to be that kind of guy. So before we dive into like all the policy and how you kind of took action, what got you into spearfishing in the first place? Because that's not ever something I've heard about up here in the Midwest, like Michigan, Ohio, anywhere, even on the Great Lakes. So I can't imagine it's too incredibly common.
No, not super common. A couple hundred people maybe at the most are doing it on the normal, but got into it. Mostly was very water-based through high school as a lifeguard, swimmer, water-orientated, and I lived in California for about 5 months. Mm-hmm. And in Florida, you can catch lobsters by hand, like pretty much whenever, right? So yeah. I was like, hey, I'm a good swimmer. Let me give this a shot, go grab some lobsters in the Pacific Ocean. Heck yeah. Do that, move back to get into this electrical apprenticeship that I just completed. And my brother, the Michigan Spearfishing Association, put on a spearfishing tournament. I think it was the first time they ever did it. And my brother participated in it. And I was like, I seen him post about it on Facebook. And I was like, dude, I want to try this. This looks awesome. And he was like, all right, come on out. We did it in Muskegon. Shot some carp, drum, suckers, no big deal. And I just absolutely loved it. Diving in the water, seeing the fish, and learning how they behave and interact with each other. Instantly hooked. And so that's what, after that, it was like, okay, give me the gear. I want a real gun. I want a wetsuit. I was like, I want the nice fins. I was like, I want to get, fully invested in this.
So it looks like spearfishing sort of a combination between free diving, almost kind of like scuba diving a little bit. What is the gear that you need overall to be successful? Because it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it might be very specialized gear, because I have no concept of what you would need to get into spearfishing. Yeah,
the basics, I like to tell people, if you're going to do it a short time frame, there's a period in the Great Lakes where the water is like above 70 degrees. That's a good time. You don't need much. If you're not too bad with the cold, you can get away with just, a shirt and some swim trunks. Then the best part is fins, mask, snorkel. Those are going to be your big three that are going to get you in the water and get you moving better. And then your spear gun. I'd like a knife too, dive knife, just in case you need to cut line or anything like that. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, start earlier, like late May, going to this time of year, you're going to want some form of a open cell wetsuit, 3 to 5 mil at least. And then after that, it's just little gear. I always have dive flag, floats to put your fish on, stringers, that kind of stuff. Little nicks and knacks. And there's several different spearfishing outlets, if you will, that have beginner kits that will give you the breakdown of like, oh, hey, weights, dive belts, those kind of things. So, it's not too complicated. Like, here's a beginner set. Give it a try, and then you can kind of dissect what you want and modify as you need.
And it sounds like it's really awesome for people who enjoy swimming, because it's not necessarily your typical sit on a boat, fish, try and find habitat. Like, you're under the water, you can see the fish. And that's a whole different ballgame. Like the stuff you post on Instagram, which I'd definitely recommend everybody go checks out, is just super cool. So are you just down there? Is that just a GoPro you're filming with? Because I can't imagine what else you'd be using.
I got the GoPros. The GoPros are the best because they're small. You put them on your mask, you put them on your spear gun, or put them on a little selfie stick or whatever. I did get a legit camera this year, but you can't film with it. You have to literally have somebody down there filming with you, which is kind of problematic because sometimes you can't do that. Get away with it, Yeah. So, but the GoPros help the most. But I don't know. It's just. I think one of the good things about this is, like you were just saying, people from a stationary pointer from a boat, that's just really not their thing. Now they can enjoy fish and doing it a different way, like in the water, being active, getting to see it, and going from there, you get the fish and take them home. And now this is what this order kind of really opened up, was being able to have access to those fish with another method.
Yeah, and so, I guess we'll just get into it now. There was a little bit of uproar. Some people were kind of upset over the whole spearfishing thing. What's on the opposing side? What are people's arguments against spearfishing? Is it are they assuming you're going to go down there and just slaughter fish because you can see them, or what's the argument? Because I can't, like you said earlier, there's not that many people. It's like 200 maybe people in the state of Michigan are doing this. So like, how many thousands and thousands of fishermen are there, traditional fishermen? I'm just trying to learn the issue. Like, what is the major complaint against spearfishing?
I think it's a lack of knowledge. It's just a new method. It's really not been explored. And in the previous order, it was really just kind of lumped in with bow fishing. It's just a way to just kind of kill fish, honestly. And it's kind of a big PR problem for hunting, angler community as a whole, if you really look at it, because people looking to get into a new sport or whatever, shooting fish and disposing of them isn't really a great look for fishing as a whole. So I think that's really what this can do. I think that's a big misconception. They're like, oh, there's exactly what you say. They seen heaps and piles of fish just being thrown, into the trash. And it's just, they think that's going to be the same thing, but we're bound by the same rules and same regulations, possession and size limits as we are as hook and line anglers. So we're just kind of painting a new face and doing interactions like these and kind of getting the word out that, hey, we're following the same rules. There's not a lot of us. We're kind of doing all the same thing. We're just doing it a little bit different. I think that's going to allow people to understand that, hey, this isn't a threat. This isn't an issue. It's just another method of doing the same thing, just a little bit different way, and get more people involved, which is great because in a climate where, license sales are declining annually, we need to do a better job of getting people involved. And if opening up another method to take is what we got to do, then it's what we should do to get those license sales up.
And, that's something you're going to find, I think, with any situation, with any sort of outdoors whether it's recreation or whether it's hunting or fishing. The old guard is always on defense. They always are we've never done it this way. And I mean, things are evolving at a rapid pace nowadays. I mean, we went from hundreds of years of, we went from telegram to freaking phones, and then we went to cell phones to the internet, and now everything's on demand all the time, and a lot of people have a lot of difficulty with change. I mean, we're human beings. We have a difficult time with change in any situation, but I think what you said is getting the facts straight is really important, because people just like to be upset, I think, at this point in time. They just want to be mad about stuff. And the way I see it is, spearfishing doesn't have the same point of entry as fish. You can go to Walmart and buy a $30 fishing pole and go out and buy a thing of worms and $5 in hooks and you're good to go. Anybody. I've seen kids on the shore slaughter bluegill populations, like taking 20, 30 fish. And, you know, we're all as outdoorsmen and women bound by these same laws. Like, if you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law. So, you know, you kind of went up against everyone, essentially, and took a stand. I know you went to a lot of policy meetings and things like that and said your piece. So, as we talked about before the podcast, getting people to get involved in the political level, I think, is very intimidating for a lot of people. So what path did you take? Like, was it a little nerve-wracking for you, or were you just kind of like, hey, I got to do what I got to do to get this passed because I'm super passionate about it?
It was a shot. It was like a shoot your shot kind of moment, right? Mm-hmm. It was like, we got nothing to lose. I know. And then, you know, everybody tells you, oh, I've tried it, and we've tried it, and nothing has been successful. So I was just like, well, I got nothing better to do. What's the worst I can do is try. You know, it was a simple Google search. That's all I did was I was like, how do you change laws in Michigan, fishing regulations or whatever? And it was like, NRC, they are the lawmaking body. They have monthly meetings. Email this person. They will get you a public testimony. That's literally all I did. Now, up to that point, I didn't, like I said, I had no idea. I was nervous. I made the testimony, but once you get in there, then you start meeting people, you know, people who are part of the MUCC and all these different, you know, Trout Unlimited. And you start to meet these people and you start to understand, like, hey, these associations have certain amount of pull with the commissioners, and that's kind of joining forces with them and getting everybody on that same page and talking person to person, face to face is where you're going to get a lot of ground made up. And then after that, it's just the process of the DNR uses to vet new laws before they put them in front of the commission.
Yeah. So what was your appeal that eventually got things to change? Because from what I've been told by certain people, you kind of single-handedly made this big leap and kind of took this under your wing to make it happen. So like, what did you say that maybe other people didn't say in the past that they kind of took it under consideration and eventually ended up changing things?
I think maybe one of the bigger things that I said was after my testimony, we kind of have a little back and forth with commissioners, and they were like asking me, just like we're talking, you know, like what is it about this method that you like or whatever. And I was like, well, I just think it's a little silly that I buy a license. I've been buying a license just like everybody else. But with one method, hook and line, I can catch 5 largemouth bass, let's say, for instance, 14 and above. That's perfectly legal. I can do that every day. Mm-hmm. But if I take this spear gun, I dive underneath the water, and I shoot one, now I'm a criminal. And I was like, there's 9 other non-coastal states that allow freshwater fishing or spearfishing for game fish. Michigan has all the fresh water. Why aren't we the ones leading this? You know, why are we collecting data and giving the information out there about how many people like doing this, what kind of impact it has, you know, conflicts of users between boaters and spearos, that kind of thing. I was like, why aren't we the ones kind of leading this? I was like, we have all the Great Lakes. We should be number one. You know, Wisconsin has, you know, besides Lake Michigan, they have all inland lakes, mm-hmm. but they still allow, you know, panfish, perch, crappie, you know, rock bass, that kind of stuff. They allow those guys to do it. We have Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Erie. You know, You can spread us out. You know, you could put, you know, 1,000 people out there and not have any issues, in my opinion. But you take 200 and you spread them across the whole state and all the great. It's like, come on, we should be number one in this. I think that had a general appeal because on a lot of situations, for whatever reason, Michigan seems to be last in a lot of, like, whether it be mandatory, you know, harvest reporting for the deer and you know, disease control or whatever it is. It just seems we always come last for a lot of things. Like, what is it? 48 states have dove seasons and now we don't have one. Like, what's up, Michigan? So I think that had a good appeal to the commissioners in some form.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, like, when I think of Michigan as someone who lives in Ohio currently, it is like the recreation state where you just go up there and there's so much to do. I mean, you have upland hunting, you have duck hunting, you have deer hunting, you have bear hunting, you have like some of the best fishing in the world. There's lakes surrounding all sides of Michigan. There's lakes all over the inside of Michigan. I mean, it's a paradise, and there's so many different types of habitat. There's hardwood forests. You got all these like piney, brushy, scrubby areas, and it's just like its own world in and of itself. I mean, you have freaking wolves and moose and like, come on, dude. It's one of the coolest. Yeah. Elk. It's an insane place. And yeah, like kind of like you said, the fact that they were like last in the charge to do this. What was legal before things started getting shaken up here? I mean, what could you spearfish for? Because you said you've done it in the past before they allowed game fish. So just kind of like any sort of carp or whatever.
Yep. Anything that was legal with bow fishing. If you could shoot with a bow and bone line, you're game. So we were lumped right in 100% with them. So it's open all year on all bodies of water that are non-trout streams and trout lakes.
Okay.
And I think catfish, you can shoot catfish. So there was limits on catfish. Burbot and whitefish were probably the best eating fish that you could get. But burbot and whitefish are basically impossible to get because they don't come in until November. And by then, the water is just so cold. It's like, I'm deer hunting, please. I'm not going to go leave the deer hunting woods for these fish. And catfish, we're shooting a couple of catfish here and there. Catfish are surprisingly hard to find, believe it or not. So yeah, it was just, it's not a big appetizing field of fish there, honestly. And that was another thing maybe that I didn't mention, but, we just want table-worthy game fish. That's a pretty big, that was a pretty big point I like to harp on too. It was like, hey, we just want some better fish to eat, is that so much to ask for?
Yeah. So do all the normal limits stand with just traditional fishing, with spearfishing, or do they kind of change the rules up a little bit for you guys?
So currently how they're running it with this 3-year trial period, we're doing the same, right? They want to directly compare us to hook and line anglers on an effective basis, right? Like they know for charters are what they're comparing us to essentially. Salmon, lake trout, walleye charters, they have to report their harvest just like we do. And so they report every day how many fish they got, how many hours they fish, and how many people took out. So they want to know in comparison, how well are we doing? So right now it's the same. I have been fully on board and fully supportive of that. If it's not good for the resource, we don't want it. So if we need to bring those harvest limits back, then we can absolutely do that. And another criticism is sizing fish underwater. Like, hey, John, you're just looking at this fish. How do you know how big it is? And my argument was like, it's the responsibility of every angler to shoot that fish legally, a legal size fish. So if you don't know, let it go. And we're down there looking at it. We should know what we're looking at. And the smaller the fish gets anyways, the harder it is to hit. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like, it was a good way around it. But I was like, if we lower our limits to say 2 of every fish, can we just get rid of size limits and just say that's not an issue anymore? And I'm fully on board with that. If they were like, hey, you guys can shoot salmon and bass and whatever, but we'll give you 2 of everything, no size limits, if that's what works in Michigan, then that's what works in Michigan.
So has there been any pushback from your own community, like the spearfishing community, or are they super hyped about it?
So yes, it's funny because on one hand, I basically did this on my own. I asked people to come to these meetings and give testimony, and it was just during the week, and nobody would take work off. They didn't show up, and I was just pretty much alone. So when things came down to like giving up night fishing, I was like, sure, that's an easy thing to give up to be able to shoot walleye. That's not a big deal. But then there's people, I post about it and they're like, oh, now we can't shoot fish at night. Oh, I'm so mad. And I'm like, but you can shoot a walleye, not that you ever win at night.
Yeah. You should have showed up then, dude.
People, yeah, exactly. Show up. What a convenient thing to say after all the work has been done.
Yeah.
But, majority, I would say 90% of everybody's very happy. There's a couple anglers that are just like, bro, spearfishing is the way of the future, and we're the most selective and ecologically friendly and blah, blah, blah. And I may or may not believe some of that. But at the same time, I'm like, bro, there is a million other anglers out there in Michigan, and their perception of us 100% matters, right?
Yeah.
100% matters.
Yeah.
And that is what the commission is basing this on. They're like, hey, let's see how you all can get along. Because at the end of the day, the majority pretty much rules. So there's a couple people that are a little upset about it, but I'm like, hey, we're working with everybody. We're making progress. And this is something Patrick told me. Don't let perfection mess up the progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, that is very true. I mean, no matter what, even like on a podcast like this, we're talking conservation, we're talking protecting wildlife. And no matter what you say, who you talk to, people are going to get pissed off. It happens to me every day. The people have like the weirdest perceptions, and then they like oust themselves like, well, I'm going to kill deer whether they're legal or not. I'm like, you're going to get arrested. Like I'm probably not going to report you, but like someone from the DNR could easily see this and be like, and find you. Like, what the hell are you doing? But so on a level of enjoyment, I mean, I'm assuming in the past you've been a traditional hook and line fisherman. What do you enjoy about spearfishing? Because I mean, obviously the skill level is a whole different ball game, but it's also you're in their world the way I look at it. Like you're in their territory. So what's so different about it or enjoyable compared to just traditional fishing? Which I fish all the freaking time. It's like what I do after work or whatever. I'm out there fishing because it's easy to do. You don't have to go climb into a stand. You just hop on the shore, hop in a little boat and tool around. It's fun.
Yep. And I'm 100% with you. I grew up hook and line fishing up until, like I said, I was like 27, 28, 29 when I started spearfishing. So it wasn't like this thing I've been doing for a long time. I just got into it. But I like two things, right? I like physical activity. I like being out there and doing different things, right? Mm-hmm. Rather be riding a bike. That's something we kind of skipped over too. Michigan, great mountain biking trails, amazing. Surfing, kiteboarding, right? Non-conservation sports, but a great time. Yeah. But I think that, that got me into like running and stuff. I was already doing that kind of stuff. And then I was like, oh, the spearfishing thing is good. I'm very comfortable in the water. And then you get to go down there, you get to see the shipwrecks, see those fish in their habitat. I've become a better hook and line angler because of my spearfishing, because you get to see how those fish react to the thermoclines, how they react to structure and currents and those kind of things. Good example, kind of getting a little bit off topic. We were going spearfishing, me and my 4 buddies, went up to the tip of the thumb up in Port Austin. We were going to try this shoal that we've seen on like Navionics. Mm-hmm. Mud the water's all murked up. Couldn't go spearfishing. Couldn't even see our own feet. No viz, right? One of the big limiting factors is visibility. So what do? We got the trolling stuff with us, right? Throw out the lines. We catch 18 walleye in about 2 hours trolling, and we lost a 12-pounder at the boat because we didn't have a net. We were planning on spearfishing. So people who are like, oh, they're gonna shoot all the fish, or they're worried because it's gonna allow people to harvest fish. God forbid we should have fish to eat and have another method of doing it. We can still catch them. I was on the Detroit River like 15 times this spring, catching limits, every other day, in 2 hours. So it's not like it's it's just picking one. And I think when you go spearfishing, getting to see the fish and just be down there, it's just like whenever you go to Cabela's and you see that aquarium in there, who doesn't want to go down and just enjoy that view? And you'll see those videos where I'm just sitting there. I'm not shooting anything. I'm just enjoying being in that experience and being in that present moment and getting to see those fish. And another good thing too, kind of going back to the regulation side of things, there's a huge disconnect between the DNR, the commission, and the anglers and the hunters that are trying to participate. And those used to be cohesive in managing it, right? Anglers and hunters and the DNR were like cohesive. That used to be a thing. But now it just seems like we're getting away from each other. And like I said, voluntary, I think the number was 30% of voluntary surveys are being filled out. How are they supposed to manage our resource properly with that kind of information? So I'll tell everybody this from being involved, expect that to come full circle, because that's not just going to be deer hunting. I think that's going to be small game. I think that's going to be fishing. And that's the general temperature I've been getting from the commission. It's like, hey, we don't know what's going on out there. The surveys just aren't coming in like they used to, and we need to get that information to us. And another funny thing is that if you've been paying attention, I think it's the Saginaw Bay, St. Clair River is all open year round now for walleye. Walleye in the Saginaw Bay are estimated to be over 7 to 10 million in the bay, and they're destroying the perch population. Mm-hmm. Every time we were up there in Tawas, East Tawas Bay, literally hundreds of walleye, and all they were doing is eating all the perch. And I got videos of this. I'm sending it to the commissioner, showing them, and they're loving it because they're like, John, like we have huge issues between charter anglers and like your regular recreational anglers saying two different things. And we're wondering what's going on down there. And I just seen video confirmation of what we thought was going down there, and like eyes in the water on those fish. They're like, that's super huge. It's like they really would, it seems like they're really willing to give us more if we continue to give them, you know, those details about what's happening underneath the water in the fishery.
Damn. That's awesome. And I have heard about that because I was just perch fishing on Lake Erie last Monday, and that's like all they talked about. They're like certain areas, you know, people are getting pissed because there's too many walleye. And like people have a hard time that don't follow things or understand like the basic concepts of wildlife management. Like I'm no freaking expert, but I get it. And it's like,
right.
People think that nature is this like unstoppable force, and like it just does like, oh, the walleye will be fine because of this, or the perch will be fine because of this. But like they don't take into account often that we've totally screwed everything just by how we are as humans. Like we have the ability to decimate populations, and we have the ability to bring back populations. Like we have a very strong ability, but we can't do that without conservation work. And that's like the whole message is like people also like to get upset with like the DNR or people, you know, wildlife officers. And it's like, well, if you're not doing anything that you're not supposed to be doing, like you're not going to get in trouble. You know, like do you have your license? Are you killing more animals than you should be? Like then absolutely. But these aren't arbitrary laws because like some guy just felt like, oh, I don't want people killing as many deer. Like they're managing populations. That's like the whole concept. So everything in the ecosystem's healthy. And so like, that's why people like you have to fight for a new sport, because people think you're going to decimate populations, which is entirely not true. In my opinion, I haven't read the data or anything. It's still coming out. You're still working on this.
I do have some preliminary data if you would like to hear it. This is preliminary.
Let her rip.
So, as of August, so April 1, this was legal, right? As of August 30th, 147 unique underwater spearfishers have harvested 301 walleye, 11 pike, and 1 lake trout.
That's like 2 fishing boats a season worth of fish.
That's like a weekend for a charter.
Yeah. So you guys are like really just laying the herd on them. Yeah.
Yeah. A joke. I mean, and I was halfway thinking, I was like, you know, let's take those 147, let's take the most effective ones, apply it to the maximum number of those sales we think we'll get on those licenses, and then manage it like that. Like that was kind of where my head was, but those are preliminary numbers. Nothing's, you know, this is not through October or December. So, which, I mean, the fishing season is over pretty much right now. Like if you go out right now, good for you. But I can't imagine more than a small group of like 5 people would be willing to go out and try for like a lake trout or something like that. So it's like, but those are the real numbers, right? And Lake Michigan, which I kind of is, because it's so far south down on Lake Michigan, they only got 51 walleye as of August 30th. 51 walleye. I
know people who have caught that many individually. But
I don't even know how many anglers were out there, but I know at least 6 or 7 that have been fishing out there. And between that 6 or 7, if they only got 51, dude, just go to the river and fish with your hook and line. But I mean, if that's their method, though, that's their method. As long as that's another good thing to know too, is if you're fishing on these pierheads, just as a hook and line angler or in the water, you got to be respectful of one another. You know, that's my big thing. Tell everybody is just, they're kind of stuck on that point. You can swim around, you know, you can get lucky out there and find a fish, get lucky, run into fish. So it's just be mindful, be courteous to those guys, because those are the ones, we can't be having negative interactions with them, or else that's going to look bad on us, because you can get those interactions where, oh, screw you, I'm here and you don't have any more right than me, because if I was up there fishing with a pole, I'd go shoulder to shoulder with you like we do at Tippy Dam, and it's no big deal. But it's just not the same when you're in the water. It's just not the same. So just don't do it, please.
Well, and people highly underestimate how much work can be undone by one asshole. Like, it really is like that. Like, one person can undo a lot of the work that you're putting in, and that's the unknown. That's the frustrating part, I'm sure, because you don't have any control over that. One of the things that I really, before I forget to ask you, that I was very curious about when I first saw you spearfishing. So do the fish, are they spooked by you at all when you're down there, or are they kind of just more calm? Because the videos, it looks like you get pretty close to them. Like, you're not, like they can get spooked by weird lures that are acting weird. Like, so as you under the water kind of floating in their territory, are they just kind of cool with it, or are they kind of a little spooky, or what's it like?
Two things. You're a deer hunter.
Yep.
Does it just seem like some deer can pick you out from a mile away no matter what you do?
Yeah.
And then does it on other days just seem like they'll walk right underneath your tree and don't give a damn?
Yep.
Same kind of thing. Some days they're like skittish as can be, and other days they'll swim right up to you. Second thing, a lot of those videos you see them swimming right up to me, I'm a minute 30 breath hold. I've been down there for a minute, and a lot of that, what you're seeing is curiosity. After they swim away, that initial kind of scatter, I'll lay on the bottom and like, what's that? And I'll swim over, and then I'll be doing my little spirit fingers at them, and that piques their curiosity too. And that's another way of bringing them in. Those are some of our tactics. You can have flashers or your little spirit fingers, or holograms on your spear gun to try and flash at them to get their curiosity. So, two things: sometimes they're skittish, sometimes they're not, and usually what you're seeing is a prolonged or a shortened version of a prolonged video where I'm just sitting on the bottom and they're coming into me after I've kind of initially spooked them off.
So as far as the most fun fish to go after with a spear gun, what do you think's like top rated?
Man, that pike I shot. So the pike are kind of difficult. I've only seen two, and I got both of them, but they are actually kind of intimidating under the water to see something, 40 inches long, kind of swim right up to you, because they're predators. They're checking you out. That's another thing. Once you get down there, they kind of notice you, and then they come in, and they are very well camouflaged, because you don't see much. You see that kind of shoulders and that flat black green, and they turn sideways, and you see that they're almost like diamonds underneath those white dots. You don't see it when you pull them out, but when they're underneath the water, I don't know, maybe there's some refraction in there or something. Those things just light up like little diamonds on their side, and that was probably the coolest fish. Is like when I seen that big old pike, I was like, oh! I almost shot in like self-defense. It was kind of scary because he's big, and you're like, ooh. But then you shoot him. My buddy Riley actually shot one, and he thought he missed because it was kind of a further shot, and the spear went all the way through, and it kind of like had like a retraction on it a little bit, so he didn't think he hit it. And he was like, dang. And he kind of like let his guard down, and the fish took off real quick and jerked the gun out of his hand. Oh. It was like, and he chased after it and it disappeared. So he comes up and he's all, distraught, because this is like his first year spearfishing. He's like, oh my God, I lost my $300 spear gun or whatever. So he calls me over. I swim over to him. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, dude, I just shot this real nice pike. And it got, pulled the gun around my hand. I was like, dude, you didn't hold on to the gun. He's like, dude, I thought I missed, whatever. And while we're sitting there having this conversation, the fish and the gun float right up to the surface, So we swim over there like, man, and we grab it, you know, we're like, oh, I'll celebrate and everything. It was funny.
Wait till a muskie rolls up on you. That would be intimidating. Because like underwater's freaky, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like I grew up in Southeast Michigan, and I've always been up on lakes and stuff my whole life. So I'm not like scared of the water. But like coming up to fish under the water is just weird in general. So like I can't imagine like a animal with big teeth coming after you. So it's like, is a pike, or I mean a muskie, something you guys can go after? I mean, is that part of the gig, or how does that work?
No muskie. So when we did the regulation, it was eating fish, table-worthy fish. So we decided on pike, walleye, and lake trout.
Okay.
Those were like going to be the testing species, because pike are never really an issue for anybody. Like if you want to keep them pike, whatever. Walleye are, I mean, there's literally hundreds of millions of them within the body of water that's known as Lake Erie and Lake Huron. And then lake trout we have naturally reproducing populations of lake trout now. So it's like between the seasonality of the water that is really diveable and the times that they spend in that shallow enough water to target, it was like, is it really going to be an opportunity? Well, let's find out. And one lake trout that was shot in April, allegedly, is all we have to show for it. So it's like, yeah, good luck with that. But muskie can be speared through the ice, I believe on Lake St. Clair in the wintertime via like a dark house spear.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe there's a conversation that could be had in the future about that. I'm not particularly for or against that. That will just kind of be on the fisheries managers. I'm not going to be like, bro, we need muskie, you know. What's the rule? You can get one muskie a year, right? Isn't that the rule, I think?
I've never fished. If I don't fish or hunt for an animal, I don't have no concept, because I'm like, I get so sucked into like the one species that I'm so nervous to screw up the regulation or something. I like study the crap out of it. But other than that, even like bird hunting last week, I was like, how many is it? I asked the guy like 10 times. He's probably like, will you shut up? Like, but yeah, I have no idea. But another thing I was quite curious about was, what's the aim like with a spear gun? Because you're underwater, and it's not like if you shoot a bullet into the water, it pretty much loses all of its speed. So how does it react when you're shooting a fish? Like, is it kind of just like a traditional bow where you kind of naturally shoot, or is there an aiming system? How does it work?
Yeah, it's just, almost like traditional archery. You're just kind of looking right down the shaft, and if you're doing a good job as far as getting them close, that makes it a lot easier, because you can, like I said, when you get them 4 or 5 feet away from you, you're like, oh yeah, I know, I can see that spear. It's going to go right through the side. But your maximum effective range is like 14 or 15 feet. That's a good thing to point out too. A lot of people don't understand that. These aren't torpedoes we're shooting 30, 40 feet through the water. You got to get these fish in a certain distance, and if they're not within 15 feet is my I don't try and take shots outside of like 10 or 12 feet just to make sure you get them. That's how close you got to get to them. And like I said, depending on the day, sometimes that'll work, sometimes it won't. And then all depends on your capabilities to hold your breath. How good are you at taking a deep breath, hold it, and now start running, because you got to dive and you got to do all that. Start running, see how long you can hold your breath. And then that comfortability in the water, if your heart rate's going, you're just burning that oxygen even faster. A lot of people I take out who are, I'm going to love this. It's going to be great. I want to go. And I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. Take them out there, and they're getting on the water and like, oh, there's waves and there's rocks and there's weeds and it's not super clear, or like, this isn't what you've seen on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, well, the more you go, the better experiences you'll have. But right now it's kind of choppy and windy, and you got only get 6-8 feet of viz. So hang on, because this is how it's going down.
That sounds awesome, actually. But is that what are the dive belts are for? So you can kind of get under quicker without having to work as hard? Because I've done a little bit of diving. I think I went scuba diving once, and I've done like that shit where you're like tied to a raft that has the hose running down above you, and you just kind of swim with it over your head. But is that what the purpose of a dive belt is? Because I have like zero knowledge of what you need to dive.
Yeah, so when you have your wetsuit on, let's just say it's June, right? The water's 55, 56 degrees. The fish are just starting to come into the diveable water. you are going to be, neoprene is super buoyant, right? And so you're going to float. So I highly recommend, by the way, anybody who wants to do this, if you really want to be good at this, take a free dive class, take a free dive certification class. They'll teach you all about this stuff, about shallow water blackouts, counteracting your buoyancy, CO2 tolerance kind of techniques and things like that. But your wetsuit's going to have a certain amount of buoyancy, right? Now you want to counteract that buoyancy, so you're almost like suspended, like a jerk bait. You want to keep suspended when you get down to depth when you're fishing, and when you start coming up, the buoyancy wants to react and take you to the surface. So you want to be at a weight so that you are suspended at depth, but you float at the surface, and that's what the weights do. You kind of figure out your weight based on your body fat percentage complex or whatever that is, your index. That's what I was thinking of. And based on that and the buoyancy, you kind of figure out that weight, and that weight allows you to be comfortable at depth, not working to stay down, because the harder you got to work, less time you'll have down. And then when you're on the surface, you are able to rest and kind of regain your breath.
So is it, as of right now, is it only free diving, or is scuba diving allowed? I don't know. I
am purely advocating for free dive only. Just because there was a lot of questions about maintaining the standards of fair chase. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's not fair chase if you put on a wetsuit, use your own physical ability to get down in the face of the fish and try and harvest them that way, which I was like, come on, guys, let's be serious here. But if you want to take an artificial breathing device like a scuba tank, and then does that give you an unfair advantage? Kind of, right? I can kind of understand that, and I can understand there's a much larger community of scuba divers. So there definitely could be a conflict, or where there is that situation where you can become ultra effective because you are capable of staying underwater for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. So myself, I'm just advocating for the free diving, because I think that really makes sure that the group of people doing it are challenging themselves, or they're kind of withheld to, that standard of, if you can't do it with your own body, then that's the limit right there. If you can't do it that way, then maybe just go back to the hook and line.
I feel like it's so funny to step back and just hear those arguments about fair chase sometimes, because it's like you can deem something in your mind not fair chase. You're shooting a fish 4 to 15 feet, but you like a deer at 500 yards is like, yeah, that's totally fine. That's fair.
That's
fine. yeah, like totally. Like people think need to kind of check themselves every once in a while, and that's back to Go ahead.
Another thing that is exactly the same kind of point. Technology that's becoming available to fishermen is almost insane. It's like live scope.
Yeah.
Like
you can put your lure in their mouth.
Yeah, literally. And no matter the clarity, right? I'm at least restricted by the clarity. If I can't see, I'm out.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, they were talking about on the Meat Eater podcast. I don't remember what his name was, but they were doing those spearfishing tournaments, and they were in 4 feet of just muck water, and they were using the live scope to find the fish and literally put the leech in their mouth. And I was like, come on, I was like, there's no question. If they're not going to limit that, right? And then the fisheries division is going to be like, well, as long as everybody's staying true to the size and possession limits, the resource should be fine. Great. So, but don't come at me because I shot it with a spear gun when the water was clear and calm, and come on, there's no argument there.
Well, the whole technology thing, I mean, for people getting into the sport, I think it's awesome that it's so accessible now. Like, I use Onyx. I just spent 3 freaking hours scouting deer in a new public place I found yesterday. Went out there with a buddy. We spent 3 hours tromping around through, briars and shit and cutting ourselves up. And, I use Onyx. It's an easy app. You can mark other people's tree stands. You can mark trails. Like, that's great. That's great technology. But I feel like so much of what I see today, and I'm a newer hunter. I mean, I don't have 20 years experience, but a lot of people get this wild hair up their ass that they're going to start hunting, and which is great. I love that more people are getting involved in conservation, whether they know it or not. And they rely so much on technology and they forget the basics of like habitats, ecosystems, and all this stuff. And it's really interesting to watch because, I mean, people probably think I'm full of shit when I say stuff like this because like they don't know me, and I have people that can vouch for me. But we go out and like I really try and understand fish habitat. You know, I didn't own a fish finder until this year. I'm like 33 years old, man. Like I've never owned a fish finder. Like I think it's so important to understand the basics, and my success rate and my like just understanding of whether it be a body of water or a wood patch is so much more important to me in the end of the day than getting an animal or whatever. Like the knowledge is so important, and so many people I think miss over that. They spend all this time looking at Onyx and looking at wood plots and this and that, and then they go out there and they don't know what a scrape is or what a rub is or where the deer trails have been or what kind of habitat a deer would like. And it's like that's the most important thing. So I don't know if you've seen that. I mean, you're a younger guy. I don't know if that rings a bell with you. I mean, I'm not knocking the technology. It's freaking awesome. But like, at what point are we just kind of like playing a video game and not?
I think it's interesting, right? Because I think we grew up very much prior to the technology, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I didn't get a smartphone until I was like early 20s.
Yeah.
Right. And hunting apps didn't start coming out until somewhere in that range too. But yeah, it was kind of like, well, I think that's mostly an advantage, right? Because we were out there traveling around. We weren't wasting time doing other things. We were out there understanding transitional habitats and understanding different feed sources and locating them, right? We weren't just going on an app and putting in acorns on Onyx and it was pulling up oak tree flats or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're actually out there physically doing on the ground work. But then, like, I do think that technology can be very useful because it can make a big body of water seem less intimidating, right? If you go out there, you know, just a good example is like, you know, Lake St. Clair or something like that, or Lake Huron. You get out there and you don't know, but like maybe you have all this information kind of tucked in your head. Like, okay, I know it's early spring. I know they're probably going to be hitting on some kind of a hard body bait, whether it's, you know, higher in the water column or lower in the water column, stop and go. They're probably going to be relating to rocks somewhere. Having those side imaging, be able to locate rock piles or weed beds, I think it will definitely help those who have the prior knowledge. But like you said, if you don't understand what it's showing you, it's not going to help you any. And you're only going to get more frustrated, which is, I think, going to ultimately lead you back into the hands of somebody who has had that experience. Like, hey man, you're going after the wrong fish at the wrong time of year.
Yeah.
Like, or yeah, something like that, you know, like, hey, it's post spawn, you're fishing a pre-spawn pattern. You know, you gotta bring it back. You know, you gotta understand how these fish, you know, work throughout the year. And then this is how you use the technology. Cause I mean, that's what the DNR says. 5% of all fishermen are catching 95% of all the fish. So very few people have actually figured it out. And then there's the people who are just generally successful. And then there's a large group of people who are not as successful as you might think. Like you said, you can give them all the technology, but if you don't know shit about the fish, it ain't going to make a difference.
Yep. And that's funny. I gotta be careful what I say. I think like see a lot of people that spend all their time like shooting bow or shooting gun and getting accurate as shit. And then they go out there and then they're like, well, like, it's like, where's the deer? It's like, you can shoot a dime from 500 yards, but like, where do you know where to find the animals? Like that's pretty important in a hunting situation. Yeah. Same
thing with spearfishing. Just because you're in the water doesn't mean you're going to see the fish. That doesn't mean they're there. Right. Yeah. I jumped in the water. I'm like, great example. We were going in early May. We were going to All Gray, right? And everybody's in the Saginaw Bay slaying them, you know, dragging spoons or whatever the heck they were doing. We're like, okay, we're going to do this. We did not see a single fish. We're spearfishing, We're spearfishing. We're like swimming down all around.
Destroying the populations.
Marking them on the graph and stuff. Nothing. Couldn't see we're like out there freezing our butts off in 48-degree water trying to find these fish. We want to be the first ones, We wanted that street cred, right? We're the first ones. Nope. It wasn't until the end of the month that we started being able to locate fish, and we're like, you know what? This is no different. You still got to know how the fish behave. Like there is no second for that. If you don't know where the fish are seasonally, it doesn't matter what method you use because you're never going to catch them if they're not there.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you feel like you're getting something out of it, go down in the link below and buy me a coffee. The Aptitude Outdoors podcast is fully self-funded by me. So if you're digging it, I'm just throwing out a tip jar and I appreciate you listening. Let's dive right back into this episode. Yeah, some of the best resources I've ever gotten to learn more about fishing and deer are just like these old books that you got, like guys that before there was GPS, they're just like, hey, if you're going into the woods, you need to know what this is. You need to know what this is. It's this time of the year. Or if you're going on a body of water, you need to locate this. It's like all hand-drawn maps and stuff. Dude, I read that stuff and I was like, this fish finder is great for finding depth and like cool drop-offs and stuff. Other than that, like finding the actual fish with it, I'm just kind of like, whatever. Like, yeah,
my grandpa was the same way. He's like, I don't like them fish finders. They tell me the fish there and they never bite, so I just got rid of the damn thing.
It's great for depth, not so much finding fish, because like it could locate freaking fish under you stacked up for a mile, but they could be like 2-inch bluegill or something. It's like it could be anything down there, or it could just be a weed and you think it's a fish. You have no idea, but. Is there anything before we start to wrap up here? That went by really fast, man. Is there anything that you really, really want people to know that you haven't iterated already? Because getting stuff changed legally in the legal process cannot be an exciting thing. It's probably more of a pain in the ass than it is fun. But at the end of the day, you're changing things. You're a one-man machine. You have help from other people. But is there anything that you really want people to know? Like no minced words, just like I want you to know this about spearfishing.
If you're gonna get involved, first off, support your local dive shops if you can. Keep the money in Michigan. Make sure you have your licenses. Dive flags are number one. Just boaters do not know what we are. Make sure you have some kind of a marker out to keep yourself safe. Dive with a buddy whenever possible, especially if you're new. Because having somebody out there, if you get in some kind of a weird situation, you get a cramp or something, and you need help, you need a buddy. And join Michigan Spearfishing Association. I'm like in charge of that now, and I have annual fees for MUCC and all the different groups that, help us and support us. And so, if you $15 to help me and support me while I'm out there doing that, and hit me up on DM me if you have any ideas, and don't yell at me because we're not equally, represented in the spearfishing regulations. All right. We're working slow. Like Patrick Hogan said, do not screw up the progress in pursuit of perfection. We're going to get there, and we're going to do it step by step. We're going to go through the process the right way. And hopefully in 2025, this will come up for review. Hopefully we'll be much better suited off than we were in 2021 before this got passed.
Well, and to add to what you said, if they're mad at you, show up to the freaking meetings then, instead of just being upset on the internet. I mean, that's so damn important, especially if you're at that level where you're upset. Show up.
Yes. Also no, because you don't want the wrong person showing up and spitting in the faces of the people who gave us the opportunity. I've had a couple people like, I'm going to give them my mind. I'm like, these guys just did us a total solid. They said, report, here's a couple fish. We'll see how you do. We'll see how the numbers work out, and we'll go from there. And if you show up and say, start shaking your hand and pounding on the table saying, no, this is about hook and line anglers, this is about hook and liners. We are a community of anglers. We have to all get along. And if we have to prove ourselves, then that's what we will do. We're going to be thankful. We're going to be courteous and polite to the people who are giving us the opportunities. And we're going to collect this data, because the data should, and I believe will, support our point of view. And when we do that, we can enlighten the people around us. And I think that will allow for further expansion in the future. So if you're one of those people that wants to stomp and stomp your feet and spit in the face, just stay home and yell at me on the internet. I can take it. I don't want you to piss off the wrong people. But if I have to be like, hey, he's not associated with the Michigan Spearfishing Association, don't listen to him, I will do that. I have no problem with that.
Well, I mean, it's also important to have those people like MUCC or other organizations on the same line that have experience with this. Get involved with them. I got involved with MUCC, and those dudes are awesome. They're just dudes. They and women. They go out. They're on the same page. They live for conservation. These dudes are like, this is what they do. They hunt, they fish, they conserve, and they deal with the legal stuff all the time. They're advocating, they're talking policy. Listening to them around the campfire talk policy, I was like way over my head. I had no concept of a lot of what they were talking about, but that's what they do. That's what they exist for, is to be the voice of the average guy, to help change stuff. And, you know, it sounds like they helped you quite a bit. They know what they're doing, and they know how to help. So that's awesome. Before we wrap up, you know, you want to let people know where to find you on Instagram and stuff, and where they can possibly join Michigan Spearfishing Association.
Yeah, Michigan Spearfishing Association, .com. Just Google it; it'll come up. Purely Michigan Spearfishing, purely MI Spearfishing, YouTube, Instagram. TikTok's been kind of blowing up. Every time I post one of I'll be posting stuff like this. Every time it gets all kinds of engagement. So TikTok's a good one if you're on there. I'll respond to DMs. If you want to go fishing, hit me up. I'm trying to work that out with Michigan Spearfishing Association. I'm going to kind of relaunch it in 2023. I'm going to try and get some kind of a boat structure, so new beginners can kind of get linked up with more experienced divers and get on boats and kind of get them involved and have some success. They can kind of understand what to look for and hopefully have good adventures and good encounters with fish, so that they can get more excited about it and hopefully get some more people excited about it, because 200 people, that ain't enough. We need 300 or 400, to get us all spread out and get us all equalized.
Heck yeah. Well, Jonathan, thanks, man. I learned a lot, and it's this is stuff that's on the cusp. You're still working on it. It's barely been approved, and you're barely getting numbers in from stuff that's happening this year. So I want to, give you kudos for having the balls to go up and actually do something positive, and whereas a lot of people just complain. So I think that's really awesome. And keep up the good work, man.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on and spreading the good word. Appreciate that so much. This is a big help.